Hello, friends. Welcome to Season 2 of the Club podcast. Each week, we bring you long-form conversations with the people building at the edges of crypto and community. At Seed Club, we believe in a world where people, not platforms, capture the value created online, and where community-owned networks are some of the most valuable organizations in the world. Join us for a front row seat to the latest insights and tactical learnings at the intersection of crypto and community. Today, I'm very excited to be joined by Mike Dudas, who is the instigator, creator, initiator at Links DAO. It was a fascinating conversation. Mike leads us through the Links DAO origin story. We talk about how Links DAO is operating given the regulatory gray market around NFT sales that have utility. We talk about how to break through to the next level of DAOs. And of course, one of my favorite topics, why we need more DAOs than just DAO tooling. I think Links DAO and projects like it are defining a whole new category of community token, and this conversation we start to look under the hood, so I think you'll get a lot out of it. Let's jump in. Mike, welcome to Club. Glad we could finally get you here and dive into Links DAO.
Very excited to be here. Thanks a lot, Jess.
You want to give us the 30-second intro, and then I have like a billion questions for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mike Dudas, I am a professional crypto investor, Web3 investor, early stage. And I've spent 4 years full-time in the crypto space, started a company called The Block, crypto media and research business, and spent about a year at Paxos leading our stablecoin business development before becoming an investor full-time. Basically didn't have enough on my plate, so decided to start a project called Links DAO, which we'll talk about today and can't wait. But basically trying to create the world's greatest golf and leisure club using Web3 concepts, so NFTs for fundraising and governance, and you're basically creating a global club from scratch with a group of folks who are passionate about golf and Web3.
I love the side project into, oh my God, what have I done? Path. It's a very thin line between those. Yeah. Well, and and you've been around long enough to at least recognize how fortuitous that is. It doesn't happen all the time. And so there's this balance between like, oh shit, this is a lot of work, and this is super cool. And when you have lightning in a bottle. So yeah, I want to jump into Links DAO for sure, but Web3 or crypto?
Yeah. Which is it?
What are we using these days? I love it because, you've been working in the space probably much longer. It's definitely been crypto.
Yeah, look, crypto are the assets by which Web3 flows. But effectively, if I think of Web3, it's sort of the application layer powered by crypto assets that are used for coordination, incentivization, and ownership of Web3 networks. And those could be business networks, they could be consumer-facing, etc.
I like that. I think my answer would be that it's just like the ideological evolution of words that are trying to make it more and more appealing for the next wave of human beings to come in. So we'll see what we're calling this in a few years.
You're probably closer to the truth. Yeah, mine's my thought leadership-y way of saying
it. That's great. So I've been following, I got into the space in early 2017, so definitely familiar with your work over that time span and seeing you sort of step into a more investor role and then seeing Links DAO be this thing. And I think our first interaction gave me the sense you were like, holy shit, there's a lot going on here. And much of it probably has energy beyond what you've put into it, which is sort of another fun dynamic of DAOs. But let's just jump right in because I have a billion questions about Links DAO. Give us the origin story. You're sitting there drinking a cup of tea and you're like, I want to do a Links DAO, and all of a sudden, oh my God, or like, yeah, where'd we start?
Yeah, it was approximately that, genuinely. So we were basically, like I'm sure you and many of my friends, you're working in Web3/crypto in a bunch of WhatsApp groups and Telegram groups. And you're always sort of chatting about what are the interesting projects that are happening. And this was mid-December of 2021. So about 3 months ago. And what was going on is we'd seen Constitution DAO had sort of taken over the headlines, ultimately unsuccessful in its core objective, which was, purchasing a copy of the Constitution, but was really cool as a way to get a group of people globally aligned and excited and working towards a single common goal. So that was inspiring. And at the same time had seen folks begin to use NFTs for more than just profile pics or art or collectibles, and actually as membership and or utility instruments. So basically examples of that would be like Gary Vaynerchuk and his brother AJ as a friend, and they were doing VFriends, and Flyfish Club was the one that we were looking at that particular day. which was a token gated restaurant. And so, own that NFT and you're a member of the restaurant, and it's going to be, one of the world's best restaurants and exclusive like Rayo's here in New York. And so I was talking with some folks in one of these groups, and I'm a golfer and have been since I was young. And we were like, thinking about different ideas of like, what are some other cool concepts by which we could combine, again, basically fundraising and governance and or participation membership utilizing NFTs. And golf immediately came to mind. And as these things tend to happen, I tweet first and ask questions later. And I was like, basically tweeted like, Links DAO, we're going to buy one of the world's top 100 golf courses, more to come. And that was it. And it really was more to come. What was really exciting is that people really gravitated towards the idea. We were able to really quickly stand up Discord, and it was a classic crypto / Web3 project where people just started volunteering and contributing. And to this date, like we're 3 months in, like the only thing, I financially have to show for it is a bunch of like expenses on my credit card, right? We're not, taking salaries, but basically the idea was, okay, look at golf. Golf is it's getting better, but it's difficult to get access to courses. It's expensive. It can be exclusionary, maybe not particularly diverse. What would be really cool is if we basically create a club from scratch in public that is accessible to anybody. The original idea was, hey, one course, but I think it's definitely evolved at this point to where we'd love to build a global network of them, some owned, perhaps some partnered over time. Anyway, it really resonated with folks. And within 17 days, we went from an idea that a few of us had in a WhatsApp group, and then that moved to a Slack group, and then that moved to a Discord. There were about 30 people kind of initially involved as quote unquote founding members to, we have 5,300 NFT holders, 15,000 plus Discord members, 30,000 plus Twitter followers. And the world is like really taking it seriously, the golf world, the business world, the crypto world. So we're making a lot of progress and excited about that.
Yeah, I think that's like the speed that you can go from a tweet to like an economic organization or an economy. It's pretty fascinating. So there's like obviously an increase in the scope and vision, but I'm curious, it's one thing to go for people saying, yeah, I'm going to ape into this NFT. I've seen so many of these sort of things and some upside potential, so I'm going to kind of be a part of it. It's another thing to go do the work that's required to go do this. And of course, there's, I'm sure, no shortage of work here. I'm curious about so many things. Let's just jump into the work thing first. How is work getting done within Links DAO, and how are you thinking about the longevity of that, or at least incentivizing the longevity of that?
So what's interesting is basically because there's a real world component to what we're doing, we realized before the sale of the NFT that this could not be from day one a true DAO from day one. So DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. Links DAO is not a decentralized autonomous organization, and we don't pretend to be. We're an air quotes DAO, but what we are is we basically, from a non-legally binding perspective, we're not a DAO, but the group of folks who purchase the NFT from Links DAO Inc., which is a corporate entity, those are the people that we act in service of, and basically they're advisors, and they vote on the shape and what the ultimate club will look like. What they don't have and what isn't allowed under U.S. securities regulations is you can't sell an NFT that gives somebody ownership rights to an asset, right? That would be an unregistered security sale. So basically we sold these NFTs as a corporation. They're collectibles, which also give you the ability to have these governance rights around, hey, where the golf course should be, what the style might be, who the architect might be, what the club rules will be. And then in the future, once the club exists, the ability to then purchase a membership in the club. So it's like token gated membership and governance. So then the question that you asked, which is a really important one, is the work. So by virtue of the fact that it's not a truly decentralized autonomous organization, you have a really cool interplay between a corporation that's doing a lot of the very focused operational work, like basically creating really high value partnerships with golf brands on behalf of our members, doing some of the initial groundwork to speak on behalf of this entity in a focused way with golfers and architects and golf course owners, so that you don't have 5,000 people, reaching out to Bandon Dunes and telling them that we want to buy them. Like, we're trying to get the best of both worlds. So you have that focused, what we call founding members, and the corporate group that's leading. We do have a CEO, a guy named Jim Daly, who's an incredible executive, has been a public company exec, loves golf, and has managed huge organizations to hundreds of millions in revenue. So he's somebody who can scale an organization. But then at the same time, there's work that happens in the community. So on day one, we were so lucky. A guy named Cooper Sherwin, who's now our VP of community, basically just volunteered to come in. And I don't know how to run a Discord. I'm 42. In crypto years, I'm like an over-the-hill boomer. And the Discord was just going to get overrun. It was already starting to see spam, and we were like 6 hours in. He fixed it in like 6 hours. I went to bed, woke up the next morning. It was beautiful. And he loves golf, and he's amazing. And then other people started volunteering to be moderators. We, over the next week, had folks from incredible organizations, like a guy named Greg Egan, for example, who works at Goldfinch as a software engineer, came in and started building some of our DAO tooling, Discourse and Snapshot, which we've used for voting. And then we have a treasury manager. He and Chris Mattern built our Gnosis Safe, just the implementation, and the folks who manage the multi-sig there. And then they've tied that to CoinShift. And so they've put all this tooling into place. And so the community work now has been organized. It's taken 3 months, but we're finally putting forth a proposal. I mean, it seems like it's been forever, but it's only been 3 months to put in place pods. Okay, so a marketing pod, engineering pod, a partnerships pod. And we'll have right now 12 pods, each one of which has a leader, somebody who's basically stepped up and taken a leadership role and now is being nominated by the community to lead that pod. And then you'll have members within the pod. And those folks, they'll be compensated as members who are driving forward initiatives on behalf of the corporation and the air quotes DAO.
Awesome. Okay, so this is meat and potato stuff. We were supposed to have this conversation a while back, and I think if I was going to describe the look on your face, even though I didn't officially see the look on your face, it was one of the lawyers talk to me. We need to figure some of this stuff out because none of it is straightforward. And it sounds like the path that you guys have gone down is one where there's sort of this corporate entity, and then there's token holders, a separate entity, and it makes a ton of sense for any DAO that needs to engage with the real world. It makes it a lot easier to pay people, insurance, health, yada, yada, yada. I guess the details or the questions sort of come out from that for me are where does the revenue from that NFT sale live? And I guess is the intention for it to eventually, most of that economics to live within the DAO? And
yep.
Then the devil's in how you sort of think about getting there.
Yep. So basically the legality and regulatory environment around NFT sales that have communities and have utility, it's a supreme gray area. And, the lawyers would probably say, hey, don't do podcasts to talk about it. But I do actually think it's important so that people think about these things thoughtfully, because I know multiple people reach out to me daily who are contemplating DAOs. And I want to make sure that they understand that there's no easy answers. You can talk to 10 lawyers and get 10 different answers. And there's always going to be some amount of risk involved in anything that you do. But the true north is that there's some things that you can't do. You can't sell in a non-KYC, non-identifiable way, ownership in something. So we stayed away from doing that, right? There's just some things that you don't do. You can't rug. If you promise something and then you run away and you don't deliver it, decent chance somebody's going to come after you, okay? So we care about the mission that we're doing and we plan to deliver on it. So let's start with your question around the treasury. So the people who purchase the NFT, the general expectation there is that treasury is going to be used on behalf of the thing that we've promised when we sold the NFT that we're going to do, which is deliver the world's greatest golf and leisure club. The advice that we've generally gotten is, one, pay your taxes on the NFT sale, which we're going to do. And two, what we've said is we basically want to keep that treasury, so the pure DAO, the initial primary sale fundraise, in that treasury to the greatest extent possible, and then only use that for operations of community operations. So sort of paying community leaders, as I was talking about, so pod leaders and folks like that, things that sort of directly benefit the community. We had an event in Austin where we had to subsidize some of it, but it gets the community together. So things, again, that benefit the community, get people knowing one another so that we can accomplish this mission together. On the corporate side, we have other revenue streams, right? We have now a merchandise store. You have some secondary sales that we don't encourage, they just happen, of the NFTs. And over time, you can get sponsorship and licensing revenue. And there's a whole host of revenue streams. And then we can also perhaps do a profile pick, like a golf-related profile pick NFT sale that's a pure collectible. Revenue from that could go to the corporation. And then you could fundraise. You could theoretically do an equity raise. That money sits at the corporation, and then it's used to acquire, ownership of the golf course, the initial one, and then future ones, to do marketing to help grow the enterprise collectively. But to your question, we'd like to keep that treasury in place such that by next year, we actually do plan and want to find the right structure to create a true decentralized autonomous organization, initially comprised of the NFT holders, that ultimately does have legal rights over what remains post-tax of that treasury. And in the meantime, we're going to be stewards of it and try and grow it through relatively conservative means. Maybe you use Aave or Compound or something to generate some yield on the USDC. We converted, by the way, everything from ETH to USDC. We weren't looking to take crypto price risk, treating it like a true treasury on behalf of this community.
Awesome. So that connection between the future state DAO and the existing corporation, I think it sort of probably highlights a thing that I'm really fascinated with, which is trust in these early systems, because that functional inability, because if we think about more broadly governance and ownership, like we throw those terms around quite a bit. I think most often when I'm talking about ownership in the context of DAOs, it's not talking about ownership in the way that I think is probably the more common way of talking about ownership, which would be equity-like or like some sort of legal basis there. But absent that, the ability to tie it together, trust is kind of holding it together. Is that a fair statement? Like that people believe in you and your team and the community, and therefore they're not worried about this very clear separation and lack of like direct ownership over.
Yeah, almost
that
entirely.
entity.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So they believe and trust in us, and it's our job to continue to deliver as both the sort of quote unquote leadership, and then basically to support the community and their sort of will. And then the more that we deliver towards the goal, and we're making great progress, towards identifying a course through, we're actually doing a fundraise and then actually delivering on the mission. You earn that trust. We've been fortunate as well that while we were doing this over the past couple of months, particularly over the last month, you've seen a really, really good playbook emerge with Bored Ape Yacht Club in terms of taking a project that at first looked like a really cool online and in real life community. I mean, there were some meetups here in New York and in Miami and other places, but where a community sort of just took over but was given a really wonderful palette to sort of take over and create a community by the creators of that brand. We're trying to do something broadly similar, but with a different mission and a different focus area. We'd like to do for sports what those folks are in the process of doing for kind of, call it metaverse media and entertainment. They've given us a really good playbook. And so you mentioned trust. I think people trust us to create value for them, and different people define value in different ways. While our members won't own the physical golf club, we are going to give accredited investors who are also holders of the NFT the ability to participate in our fundraising on the same terms as, the professionals who invest. And then, down the road, we're going to keep a very, very close eye on Ape, the token itself, how that network and that concept of an independent, foundation works, and does it encourage external builders to come in, and can the entity itself, so Bored Ape Yacht Club in conjunction with Animoca, create a foundation that others want to build on? And I think the answer is pretty promising. The market believes yes. So it's interesting from a market perspective, how that's being valued. From a regulatory perspective, it'll be interesting to watch how that's treated as kind of it's a bit of a governance coin, but they're talking about it more with utility, and you can spend it in this ecosystem. It's something where if we were to drop a Links token to NFT holders, and then to folks who have invested, and then to keep a portion like Ape did for ecosystem development, it's certainly something that what they've done looks promising, and is something that we're going to really keep a close eye on and consider for next year. Like, we have a very explicit mission right now, which is like, go buy the golf course, deliver the first thing that you promised. Once you've done that, and you've basically created great trust amongst the community, then you can do more, and then you can maybe get other folks to do things and to build in this quote unquote brand and world and community that you've created.
Yeah, I think we're seeing very much similar things. I think ASM Brains, Fluff World guys came out with a token today. So we're seeing over the next few months, we're going to see this.
By the way, I'm a proud and delighted investor. So 6man invested in ASM. So yeah, I think what they're doing is, again, to your point, very similar in terms of the concept of basically they tie together a number of different things, by the way, through this token. And it's really cool to see the different projects and elements that are working together.
Yeah, we were sort of finishing up in the last week of our fourth batch of accelerator projects. And I think a big trend we're seeing in there is NFTs being the best proto DAO token, social token, whatever, for two main reasons. One, it's collectible, regulatory environment seems a lot easier to navigate, or at least seems to make more sense. And then two is the fact that you have a market early on, right? As much as you are not encouraging your members to go sell, members buying stuff with the ability to sell is, I think, fascinating, interesting, key to what we're building here. And the fact that liquidity can live on OpenSea rather than you having to incentivize that on Uniswap is actually a pretty big unlock for early projects. But we're seeing so many of those projects come up that are sort of further down the path, come up against the challenge of, there's a lot of things that a fungible token could allow us to do, like pay incremental work or set up an ecosystem fund, et cetera, et cetera. So just generally fascinated with like the dance between different token models and layers and consistency around keeping that clear. I think that's the question mark I have, is how do we... I know what the base asset in Links DAO is and the rules there. As we start stacking on other assets on top of that, how do we make sure that's super clear? And so I love that other people are blazing the path for us. I saw a tweet about the legal bills associated with the ape token, and I can't verify it, but it was painful, more painful than our lawyer costs, which are also painful. Love those guys, though. They're doing good work. I'm curious, so there's...
Yeah, I can say, by the way, the legal bills to solve these problems and create these frameworks, they are non-trivial.
Well, and that's why you do that stage, right? NFT sale, capitals in the community treasury or corporation. Okay, now you can think about those things, ape or whatever the SM token is, or the path really is offshore foundation, et cetera, and you're just in a different world than maybe a couple friends that want to see if this is even a thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like our three largest expenses, one is a tax, two is people, right, and paying contributors, and then three is legal.
It seems to me that Links, well, actually, I'm interested in your high level thesis here. The thing that we believe to be true is that community is now an investable asset, right? Like tokens change that. The idea of being able to represent ownership, membership, participation in a community through a token is a massive enabling technology. And whereas before, maybe Links DAO doesn't become something people want to invest in because there's no tools or tech or clear product there necessarily out the gate. But what you do have, obviously, is like 5,800, some number of people wanting to put 0.2 to whatever they're paying on the line for this. And so what is your sort of working thesis here as to where value flows to communities or in Web3 more generally?
Yeah. So, our overarching thesis is, as investors in 6man, we've invested in Altered State Machine. We've invested in a number of different Web3 networks and DAOs and then even tooling and infrastructure companies that have tokens. But our general belief is that the majority of the value in quote unquote Web3 will flow to the tokens. That's why they exist. I mean, you don't just create them for no purpose. And so we've invested in companies that have governance tokens, and that governance has value, some that have utility, some that are fee generating. There's all different models, but the general thinking is that out of our portfolio, we would expect like 80% or plus of the exit value to be in the tokens. And that's the application layer as well, because we do not invest in layer ones, out of our core funds. So we're really talking about application layer, token driven protocols, projects, and companies and entities. So with like Bored Ape Yacht Club as another example, there's going to be a mix. So investors, basically were able to, for their investment, get a percentage of the equity and a percentage of the token. I think there's a really clear way where both accrue value. So, Bored Ape Yacht Club itself is going to generate ongoing revenue. I mean, their deck leaked from land sales and so NFT sales and things like that. So that's value to equity holders. At the same time, if ape does become, if the land, for example, an ape, I guess, is the currency and does a bunch more eventually. I mean, the details are still not like really fully baked, but that, I would expect value, and the market certainly does in terms of how they're valuing it. I think it's 13, 14 billion in fully diluted value today. That value is going to accrue to token holders. And in many cases, like it doesn't necessarily have, and it's not valued fundamentally in the way that equity and assets have been valued in the past. And I know that's very distressing to Warren Buffett, but I think to a new generation of investors and market participants, it's not. It's like, I want to participate in and own a piece of a valuable network that I'm part of and using and contributing to. And hey, maybe profit isn't the only way to value these things. And so if somebody tomorrow is going to find this network as valuable as I do in their daily life, then I'll have the ability to sell my token to them for maybe a higher price.
Yeah, to me, like the pure captivating thing about crypto is this idea of being able to own networks. Stepping into a career as social media, and you could was really taking off, and you could start to see the power of those networks and the challenges with them. I think that's sort of like a big aha for me. And I think like when we start to think about what makes a network valuable and how do assets relate to that, I think it gets really interesting. And I do this sort of token engineering presentation in the C Club cohort, and it's like literally the worst token engineering presentation ever because it has none of the math or anything like that. It really just tries to simplify things down to the point where like if more people want to buy the Links DAO token, the token's going to be worth something and worth more in the future. And if less people want to buy it, and so there's like just the real basic supply and demand that seems to have like an over, well, I guess people call it speculation, but a significant impact on these networks. So yeah, I'm curious. You sort of said like there's a different way of modeling value here or perceiving value here. Is it captured in sort of the cultural relevance or the utility, or like how do you see value in these networks as being different than more traditional equity valuations?
Yeah, so I think one way, and I remember Mark Cuban had a pretty good blog post on this, but it was like these networks like don't pay dividends, for example, like in the way that you would think of a corporation as historically you would value it as like the present value of its future cash flows, like as distributed to you as an owner. Even traditional businesses have maybe turned that on its head. Companies like Amazon and Netflix that just absolutely perpetually are reinvesting in the growth and value and health of their networks. And so, basically just growing as breakneck speed at effectively break even and increasing moats. I think that's ultimately the goal of many of these networks is, to attract users and participants. And I would say in the near term, what's wild is, historically, you'd have a startup and like Stripe or something, or some of these wouldn't go public for 10, 12 years, right? And they lose money for significant portions. And many, like Uber and some of these other big networks, I don't actually know if they're profitable now, but many were not profitable when they went public after many, many, many years. What's interesting about crypto networks is they're trading from, very early in their life cycle. Like Ape is trading before very, very much exists within its ecosystem. So yeah, I don't know necessarily what the metrics are by which some of these things are, going to be valued, but I would guess that it's probably something around overall utility to, I guess, like the marginal person, right?
Yeah, I think there's DAOs or so, it's not a helpful term. It's like saying incorporations or LLCs or whatever. It's a structure. I mean, helpful, I guess, in the short term. But thinking through like where these categories sort of break down into being a little bit more meaningful, I think it's going to be really interesting in the next.
Yeah, and like, by the way, tokens are great because they incentivize people to participate. Like, in a traditional business, you have to raise, again, boatloads of like really dilutive capital to like hire people and like do all kinds of things and buy like infrastructure and all, et cetera. And, now like you actually can do a lot of that with much fewer people and much less like outlay. And it often happens again in the form of like token payments and token inflation, which certainly does have a cost, but it's a very different in the near term cost from giving up explicit on day one significant amounts of equity and ownership in an unpredictable manner.
Yeah, I think we think about fundraising as like a second or third step now when you think about going to market with the projects we're working on rather than it being sort of the first step. So C Club doesn't make an investment. We're supporting to help shape the project and then exploring a variety of investment capital formation opportunities. I think that's like the thing that gets me excited about these tools and I think it's a good example here with Links DAO is that we have all these existing tools that work to different degrees and better in certain circumstances. And now we have these other rails and new tools on top. And do you sort of see like a combination of those sort of worlds, like those worlds come together and create this new thing where adoption happens? Or do you think we just sort of get rid of the traditional rails and are really, the most successful projects in this space will be Web3 native through and through?
Yeah. So in the very near term, so for example, so much of what we call the Web3 economy and the crypto networks is dependent on, and I think it's unfortunate, but it's just true, on having connection to the traditional banking world, to the traditional technology world. Like so much of crypto, for example, runs on AWS, and you need centralized exchanges, and to get access to the crypto economy, you often need a bank account and have to do KYC, like to convert from fiat into crypto. But one cool thing that's happening, and Brian Flynn of Rabbit Hole talks about this a lot, and we've invested in his project, and he's an incredible entrepreneur. And we've backed a few companies like Layer 3 who are doing different things like learn to earn or do tasks to earn. But I think it's very early, very emergent, but extremely promising. And tons of people are really getting excited about it. But basically getting your first significant amounts of cryptocurrency by doing things versus by having to convert from fiat. Now, that's cool. That's a really distinct change where the only thing I need is a self-custody wallet to have something of value. And then by using DeFi, Uniswap, etc., I can then exchange that into USDC, which is a dollar equivalent, or USDP. I worked at Paxos, so I have to throw in the name for USDP. But basically a currency that others accept. And I think what's going to happen, and what is happening, is you're going to start to see this native Web3 economy emerge. I think there's already millions of people and millions of my friends who we do transact in ETH on different things, and send people things and gifts and this and that, and pay for things in ETH. In the same way, I mean, I worked at Venmo when it had 30,000 monthly active users very early on, and it was wild to just see people go from everything was paid with cash and you're splitting bills to, hey, we're just moving money on our device and it's sitting there in a stored balance. Well, now we're moving beyond that to something that's super exciting because they run on public blockchains and they're interchangeable for other currencies. So I'm really excited. We're going to be heavily dependent on traditional rails for all of my lifetime. Like I said, I'm 42 for the rest of this century, but we're definitely, I think, going to move to a place and time. We have two kids under 10, and I think their wallets that they're used to, or quote unquote wallets, like I don't know what they'll look like, but they're going to hold multiple assets, and USD is just going to be one of them. It's just going to be one of the balances that they see. And you see this happening with Robinhood, but with Robinhood, you don't actually own the asset. You don't have the private key. And I think, our kids will. That's exciting.
I love that. I think thinking through these new, that onboarding piece, onboarding into crypto. So I have my first crypto. That's probably the biggest shift from this cycle compared to last cycle, was just how much more easy it was to get capital into crypto and out. And that's a huge enabling thing. And then we saw NFTs being like, oh, I can actually earn my first crypto pretty much, right? At least there was a pathway to earning some significant crypto, and then learn to earn, or at least this sort of education-based stuff. And it's, we think a lot about what is the right way to get tokens into the hands of great stewards within C Club, and also don't believe that retweeting something is really a value. It's valuable, love it, but it's also not people want to have a meaningful impact in these DAOs that they're working for. And so education is going to be the big thing there. So I think I see a world where people probably come through some sort of DAO operator or come learn DAOs, and then the bonus coming out of that is actually being an owner in the community, such as C Club or wherever else. And you're right, that creates this entire new market of people who can come and play these games that,
yeah, and I think your point, it's moving away. We definitely see, and look, I'm loud and influential on Twitter, but look, I had a 15-year advantage. I've been using this thing forever, right? And I enjoy it. Not everybody enjoys that. To your point, people enjoy contributing. By the way, you can contribute to your specific communities, whether it be in Discord, and there's so many interesting tools being worked on now. Probably too many. I think maybe it was you who tweeted about that. We've got more DAO tools than we have.
I got
DAOs.
Trouble for that.
Yeah, but I mean, let's be honest. You were right, but that's great. Challenging people. You shouldn't wait. Actually, let's back up. You got in trouble from who?
Well, yeah. No, Trouble's funny. I think there was a
blowback.
A lot of people developing DAO tools apparently, and they got into my replies.
I love that. Yeah,
and also just to be clear, C Club Ventures, which is our arm's reach venture DAO, has invested in 40 plus DAO tooling projects. So it's not as if we need more DAO tools, but what we need I'm going to rant for a second here,
We
Mike. You
need
set
more.
me up.
We need more DAOs, and we need more
need more DAOs.
meaningful ones.
Exactly.
We need
Yeah.
really big, grand experiments. We just invested in one called Vibe Bio, which is creating a DAO structure to help patient communities. So American Heart Association would be an example of a patient community, to help these communities where they are passionate about a disease. It matters to them. They have financial resources and they've spent them on starting to do early drug development, but maybe don't have the expertise or the full financial resources to take it the full way. ViBio brings in external capital to support that, to help, to put a governance structure around doing further development and getting these drugs from discovery through clinical trials. It's very early, but that's a meaningful, cool, exciting DAO, which isn't to say, by the way, I think Ape DAO is cool. I think, what we're going to do with Links DAO is cool. I think fun is extremely important, but I also like to see fun pave the way for things that are going to be so meaningful to life.
Yeah, I think we sort of have these epochs. If we zoom out on DAOs, go back to 2016, and then the development sort of was spun out of that, which is these big platforms, full service, all in one, everything. And then I think we learned our lessons from that, and okay, these tools actually aren't built in a way that is useful to us right now. So then you saw the Lego block, the composable tool era, and I think it's kind of where we are today. And now we're seeing a lot of other teams come back and say, well, we just need to put all these things together. And I think the answer is yes, but we need to put them together. There's no one app that runs a business. So why the hell would there be one app that runs a DAO? It just makes no sense to me. But once you start to see these specific type of use cases emerge, so venture DAOs, clearly a thing, Tribute Labs or Syndicate, great products that they can go build for that specific use case.
Totally.
NFT-based memberships, I think that's going to be the thing as well.
Yep.
We're all going to buy something, though I was going to classify Links DAO as that, but it's truly not. The social aspect of it, I think, is really the core.
Yeah, for us, it's definitely like a club that links together a group that has a common shared pastime and then can shape that club in a very specific way. But I've seen ones, to your point, where people are going to buy things like some winery DAOs, some distillery DAOs. I'm just naming ones that are fun and in the food and in that spirit. And so it's cool. But to your point, right now, it's primarily, we haven't even talked about it yet on this call, but the biggest DAOs in the world right now are DeFi protocols, right? That are effectively run by the folks who are participating in the protocol. So, if it's a borrow lend protocol like Compound or Aave or MakerDAO, the folks who are providing the liquidity or borrowing or lending are actually participants in the DAO. So, these structures, they're emergent. They are starting to work. The problems, are well documented, right? Concentration of ownership, difficulty getting people to care enough to actually vote and govern. And frankly, those are the things that I wish more tooling companies were focusing on than, imaginary problems like working on my reputation. To be honest, we invested in a reputation. I think it's early. So I give it 9 to 12 months to where that's going to matter. But none of it's going to matter, to your point and your tweet, which is so spot on, if we're not giving people and encouraging them and giving them the knowledge and the comfort from a regulatory perspective to experiment in public, because that's what these things are. You cannot do a DAO quietly. You can, but it's not a DAO. The investment clubs, I will admit, and I say it pretty candidly on every podcast and to our community, we're not a true DAO yet. I think too many, of the investment clubs, for example, that say they're DAOs, maybe aren't honest enough. But I want to give people the space to create the real DAOs where the membership votes on everything and it matters, right? And it's legally binding.
Yeah. Real DAOs versus air quotes DAOs. I like that.
No, and it makes sense to me that there's a space that it's a difficult transition depending on what your mission and goals are. Progressive decentralization does actually make sense. It did work and it has worked with major protocols, right? Ethereum, things like Solana. Even Bitcoin wasn't. There were very few owners at first, right? While it was undiscovered, but it's worked
I think
out
there's more leaders needed, not fewer. But I think there is, some meaningful difference there. I think one of our original insights with C Club was that we just need more experiments out into the market. And so we created an organization that was really about supporting those experiments. And also recognizing it's hard to do in public because there's a lot of conversations, like conversations I would love to have with you about details that I wouldn't want to have in public. And just because of the gray areas and finding where those sort of edges are. And I think you're right, like working in public is such a powerful thing in the space generally. And so a question I like to ask is just like, what, we talked about tools, but like what needs to be different for Links DAO to really hit the next level, or for DAOs in general to hit the next level? My guess is you're going to say regulations. Any thoughts on that? And maybe if there's any other barriers you see that we can try to knock off?
Yeah. So I think to hit the next level, to your point, one, we need to make it easier for participants to understand how to basically get access to crypto, to self-custody it, and then, understand what they're kind of holding and what they've purchased to become a part of the network, or how they become a part of the network, whether it's a fungible token like an ERC20 token or an SPL Solana token, or whether it's an NFT. Okay. And we did a lot of education with Links DAO, and there's a bunch of great DAOs that are working on that as well. Talk with the FWB folks this week about some really cool stuff they're working on. And why I love them is they just spend so much time as a community, like educating people as to the power and pushing the boundaries of what you can do in a decentralized community. So that's really important. Onboarding and education. Two, to your point, is regulatory is just an obvious one. I don't know that folks are going to get complete comfort in the near term, but I'd be excited if more lawyers and more people who are experienced at starting these things, and even folks like yourself, just continue to educate, by the way, regulators and educate lawmakers about how positive these structures can be, how much people like it. The more experiments you see where people are loving it, we're getting very few complaints at Links DAO. Like, we're getting way more people saying, hey, this is so freaking awesome. Like, I have always wanted to golf or participate in a global community of like-minded people. This is my first time ever, voting on a governance proposal. Like, this is really cool. And I'm doing it with something I like. And then I think the last one that I'll say here, I mean, there's plenty of other reasons, but like, let's just be honest about where we are in the cycle. Like, I think too many people are saying this is the most amazing and transformational structure in the history of the world, when we have so many, and I think it has the potential to be, like DAOs have the potential to, through, again, coordination, incentivization, and collective ownership against common missions, really do incredible things that people haven't done historically. The number of folks that we have who are doing actually more, call it quote unquote, work than they've ever done, like they have a full-time job and they're incredible professionals at companies like Lyft and Nike and other places, but are also working on this project. I mean, it's wild. It's like, it actually increases productivity in the world. Like, we're doing cool stuff. I think conveying that, while also saying, and I'll continue to say, hey, we're not fully decentralized. The members don't like own the course, but again, we're moving in the direction of hopefully, where, when, and if and when regulations change and we can offer things like that, we'll have really blazed a path, and we'll have the trust of our community where they'll want to buy into it, for example. I
also wonder, just on that last point, just how much cultural or just like examples are going to play into it. Because like for me sitting here, it's like, okay, there's an equity entity. Like my big questions are like, what control do you have between the DAO entity and the equity entity? And details can be sort of found in there. But a lot of people are just going to find value and recognize the value in just holding these NFTs and wanting to, they're used to seeing NFTs and membership-based communities be, worth something today and worth something else 6 months from now with work that gets put in. And so
the more patterns you see of that. Yeah, exactly. You nailed it. And so, and the more teams that deliver over a long duration of time, again, like Bored Ape has, like the ASM team and the Fluff, it's the same folks who are behind Fluff World, who are just continuing to develop over time a lore and a game and a community. The more great teams that deliver on the promises they make. If you remember the ICO boom, if you ICO'd, it had such a terrible connotation with it, in 2018 when everything was down bad. But out of that ICO boom came incredible products, right? Like Chainlink and Polkadot. And, there were a bunch of major projects that did ICOs. If you look at the top 30 projects today. Many of them did ICOs and are really robust. So it was a novel way for them to raise money from the public, and so it worked, and sure, there were some bad actors and some bad things that happened, but on balance it worked.
Oh, there's a whole conversation about speculation here that I'd love to get into with you and actually
that's
Brian
the one
Flynn,
the lawyers tell me to stay away from, right?
Yeah,
it's
fair.
And that's
generic.
the thing is, we have in our community, because we are basically a utility-based and membership-based project, we really don't want people speculating. So we're delighted that fewer than I think 175 out of 9,090 of our NFTs are listed for sale. We're glad that people aren't really talking about price speculation and going up. They're just saying, hey, what's coming next on the roadmap, and how can I contribute? Now, I won't BS you. Like, there are folks talking about speculation, and my kind of comment to them is, like, if we do our jobs as a community, there's a good chance that people are going to see value in these things that we hold. So let's do that.
And I think people. Speculation running rampant was 2017 ICOs, and there's a lot of shit that came up from that for sure, and also some really great stuff. And you can't really, if you could go in and just be like, I will only take the great stuff, please, but all this other shit I won't want. Yeah, that would be preferable. I always say, we need Juiceros. Do you remember Juicero? That Silicon Valley thing? Yeah, I'm like, not a great product. Maybe a lie. I don't know, but we shouldn't be judging the fact that people are putting money into these things, because it's truly where innovation in the space is coming from. And anyways, I didn't want to get drawn down this, Mike. I don't want to talk about my philosophical views and speculation.
But I think, look, 70% of the calls I make, I'm just making that number up, but more than half are wrong. And when I purchase NFTs, the ones that are right are wildly right, because you're investing at such an early stage in these communities. So things like Altered State Machine and Fluff World have done wonderfully for me. Both as a professional investor, but also as a collector. And then, most of the stuff goes to zero. But that's just, it is what it is. Now, I understand that makes some people uncomfortable, and we need to do our best to educate people that when you're investing in a lot of these NFT, and now we're talking about the NFT market and NFT projects, they're experimental and they're early, man. It's caveat emptor.
Yeah. Awesome, Mike. Yeah, I really appreciate you spending some time with us to talk through both Links DAO and just your sort of broader thesis here. I think much longer conversations to be had in the future. What's the thing that we can direct people to right now? Where should people go check out? First of all, people, you should go buy some Links DAO tokens. There's some available on OpenSea right now. This is not Mike saying it. This is Jess saying it. Go buy those NFTs because the roadmap looks amazing. I cannot wait to see this exist. I probably haven't bought one yet either, but they're on sale right now, basically. It's ridiculously cheap. You should go buy it. But where should people go?
So basically, I always like to say, and this is really important in crypto. So for the project, go to our Twitter. It's at LinksDAO, LinksDAO. You could generally trust, a Twitter address. Look at it closely. Don't search for crypto things on Google. Good chance you're going to get scammed or taken to a bad link. And then you follow the Twitter to the website or the Discord. And then me personally, just Adam Dudas, MDUDAS on Twitter. Same thing. I have open DMs and love to chat with as many folks as I can who, reach out with, reasonable requests or comments or things they want to share and talk about.
Awesome. Also want to remind our listeners and you as well that on April 1st, so it's Friday, April 1st, we have the Seed Club Demo Day. This is SCO4 projects, 21 amazing projects sharing what they've been working on for the last little while. Truly the earliest stage you'll be able to see any of these projects at. So 10 a.m. Pacific time, Friday, April 1st. I'll make sure you get a link so you can register if you're interested.
Yeah, the VC in me is circling like a shark right now.
So we create that dynamic, my friend.
Well,
this is the least demo day you're ever going to be at.
Amazing.
I think we have a couple DJs and some music acts as well. Look out.
And it's quick, right? People give a very concise pitch. I love the format. The Alliance folks do it well. They're DeFi focused. Yeah, I consider you guys to be, those two groups to be the best at this. So I'm excited for yours for sure.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you sharing your time with us today. And look forward to seeing whatever gifts you drop in the demo day on Friday.
Amazing. Cheers, Jess.